And if we just take a look at the chart, you can see we've just been meandering in this beautiful kind of
Yep.
consolidation phase, right? So it is a bearish channel. I mean, let's be clear on that, but that doesn't mean we can't go up a little bit. And if you look now, the high end of the channel is crossing right at that pink trend line, which is actually that 25.5 pivot low from the Terra Luna collapse. So it makes a
Right.
lot of sense to me that we should see one more push up right into that level. And then the question is, can it break that? And that's going to be the tougher scenario for Bitcoin to get through that 25.5. I think for the most part, I'm still neutral to positive. I think that you have a Fed that's on hold. You're likely going to see a reduction in or inflation numbers are going to come down. We've seen commodities really come down substantially over the last couple months. You have to think that's going to filter through to the CPI data this week. And I think that gives the market that ability to have a little bit more risk on before we see maybe some downside in the next few months.
If we were to get an up leg again in CPI, what would that do to Bitcoin come this Friday and Saturday?
I think it would create a big sell-off. I think you get a risk-off trade in both the equity markets as well as the crypto markets. And again, the
Okay.
idea is we already got a stronger than expected jobs number. If you
Mm-hmm.
couple that with higher inflation again, the markets are going to say, "Oh my goodness, the Fed has to do 75 basis points in September." And who knows if they can even stop going into the midterm elections at that rate.
Right.
So I would be very surprised if that happened. But if it did happen, you're looking at a big sell off, especially because the equity markets and even Bitcoin have rallied over the last couple months, especially since the last Fed meeting when the Fed was much more dovish, right?
Right.
So that alone kind of is building in the fact the markets have been building in this idea that those CPI numbers are coming down. If that doesn't happen, watch out below.
Let's paint it out a different way now, and we get CPI coming down from that 9.1. Let's say we're back in the eights, maybe a low eight that comes in on this Friday. What happens to crypto markets at that point? Do you feel like we continue to rally?
Yeah, I think that might be the catalyst to push us to that 25.5 level. So I wouldn't be surprised if the initial reaction is people's kind of breathing a sigh of relief saying, okay, we're past this nasty storm. I mean, granted, it's still inflation, right? So it's not like inflation's negative or down to zero, but at least we're not seeing higher numbers. And I agree with you, the lagging indicator of jobs. I mean, I mean, I'm sure you've talked about this, but like every day I see a new big mega company reporting new layoffs. And so
Yeah.
even though we had a strong jobs number, at some point, all these companies laying off people, it's going to filter through. My guess is the next jobs number, we start to see that. And that's one more signal that the Fed probably has to take a slowing approach to raising rates. Yeah, I mean, I still have to think that, inflation not coming down would be a very, very nasty wound to the market because
Okay.
it just tells you that again, the Fed has made it very clear that they have to get inflation under control and they're willing to push the economy into a recession. So the market's hoping that inflation starts coming down and that eases the Fed's pressure to kind of continue to lift rates. If that doesn't happen, I mean, you have to think the Fed is more than willing to push us into a steep recession to get that, and the market would not like that one bit.
And those
Mhm.
could lean into that area that we're talking about, which is Q3, Q4, of potentially being the real bottom where crypto could go. Do you feel like that is the fall right now?
That's still what I'm looking at, right? Is that you have this period where the idea is maybe the Fed can generate a soft landing, and that's giving these asset prices. We're seeing the stock market having quite a monster rally off of its recent lows. Bitcoin hasn't had a monster move, but if you look at Ethereum's had a huge move off of the lows as well. So I mean, the idea is the soft landing keeps us from going into recession. It keeps the Fed from really tightening too much more. But if you get this scenario, and this is what I think is going to happen, is I think you're going to see an economy that slips into a recession, then a worse recession, and the Fed, again, the inability initially to save the markets is by printing money like they have in past recessions is going to be very, very problematic, and it's likely going to trigger a domino effect into a worse recession. Now, at some point during this worst recession, probably in 2023, you're going to see the Fed say, oh my goodness, unemployment is now at 10%. with a recession, you usually see a reduction in inflation. Maybe inflation's come back to 4%, and they're going to say 10% unemployment. We have to start printing again, or at least lowering interest rates to stimulate growth and get some of these people off of unemployment. And that's going to be, to me, that is where you see the pivot in Bitcoin from a risk on or risk on asset to actually becoming more like that gold and starting to take off in those printing money periods. So I'm in the position of looking at it and saying, all right, the Fed, there's no way the Fed will start printing at this stage or even in the next, let's say, 6 months, because they can't do it with inflation numbers as high as they are. But once inflation numbers do come down to an elevated level, but not extreme level, again, 4%, which is kind of where I see them coming back to, and then you do get the economy to swing into a recession that's bad enough, I absolutely agree that the Fed will start printing again. It's their only playbook that they have left to do to stimulate, and the markets expect it. Investors, I mean, what's amazing about the price action recently, just yesterday, or I should say Friday and today, we saw the meme stocks running again like crazy, like it was 2021, which tells you that small retail money is thinking that just like in the COVID crisis, the Fed is going to come out, print, and get us all back to all-time highs in a matter of months. I think that's a fake out. I think the Fed, again, there's no way the Fed can print with the pressure it's putting on. And just think about politically, like you have a midterm election, the Fed can't start printing before that. I mean, that would be catastrophic for the Democrats. So again, I agree that the printing will start again. It's just probably at some point in the next year to year and a half versus in the near term.
The fact that we now have BlackRock, which is ironic, in their position with Coinbase. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I actually like it. I mean, it's one step. I don't think it changes the fact that we're in a bear market. Greed and fear really rule the markets, and right now people are fearful if the economy tanks more, if it's risk off, people will sell regardless, and probably institutions will still be very hesitant to buy into Bitcoin until we have a firm framework of kind of regulation out there from the government. But I do think, again, like I love seeing this stuff since I'm a long-term Bitcoin bull, because it's just kind of one more piece of the puzzle that's going into kind of the frame that will be a positive long-term for crypto. It's the adoption, right? I mean, for me as a Bitcoin long-term bull, my biggest fear is that it becomes obsolete, that institutions never get involved, that you don't have that money, that people put pension funds in it and all these things. And BlackRock getting involved with Coinbase, to me, kind of is just a great thing in the long term. Doesn't affect short-term price. Long-term, it's really good.
If you're looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum, which one do you like right now leading into what we're dealing with, at least in the short term? And which one do you like long term?
Good question. So short term, I'm going to play the conservative side, and I think Bitcoin is the play here. Ethereum's already over 100% off of its lows, and I think, again, Ethereum has that higher beta where in market bounces, it's going to do more, but then in market bear markets, it's going to lose a lot more as well. And because I still think we have that leg down, I think if you had to choose one, you want Bitcoin because, again, it has the stability, it has relative stability to Ethereum. Now, longer term, that's the better question, right? I think that, again, you'd probably want some exposure in both. So you cover both bases. You have the use case of Ethereum and the Ethereum network, and then kind of the digital gold where a lot of institutional money will flow into the Bitcoin, Bitcoin investments. So I think in longer term, I like both of them. I think I would generally say to people to be careful with other cryptocurrencies because, we see, if you look back 2 years ago, a lot of the ones that were in the top 20 are no longer in the top 20 of market cap. So there are ones that are replacing, like Solana wasn't around that long ago. Avalanche wasn't around that long ago. And so there's still a jockeying for what the third and the fourth and the fifth will be, as if you're looking at the blue chips. So I think if you're looking out long term, you don't know yet, but I would stick with Ethereum and Bitcoin as your investments for the longer term right now.